was ending, I'd like to be next to you. That's not really how I'd like to start with Nicola Willis as Finance Minister. Welcome.
Well, I'd give my best attempt at saving you, Nick. You're a good guy.
Gosh, when my world was ending, I want to be next to the Finance Minister. I think both the world was ending, I don't even think you could fix that there. Anyway, welcome.
Great to be on the show.
Great to see you again. Great to have you on the show. Last time we talked, we sat and had a coffee and had a chat. You told me to hold on. Survive to 25. And now, 6 months into 2025, it's not quite where we want to be, is it?
No. I mean, it's been a tough time, hasn't it? It's both we're an economy that has been recovering in terms of coming back from that period of high inflation, really high interest rates, and the strangle that put on a lot of economic activity. And just as we were getting back onto our foils, as it were, in the first few months of the year, and you saw that, our growth rate was twice what Treasury had been forecasting and what people thought was possible. Things were starting to come along, and then come April, there were some reasonably significant announcements by the US President that sent ramifications throughout the world, around the world. Growth forecasts have been downgraded. There's been considerable uncertainty. And little old New Zealand, just recovering, has been really impacted by that. And you've seen that. That's affected businesses' confidence about what the future looks like, therefore their investment decisions. It's affected the way that, therefore, people are feeling in their families and communities. So I'm very conscious of it. Good news is we are still forecast to keep growing this year and for that growth to accelerate as we look ahead. So that's despite everything the world's throwing at us. But there's no doubt we haven't escaped the aftershocks of global events.
From an outsider looking in, you seem to be throwing absolutely everything at the world. You know, your Prime Minister, your Foreign Minister, anybody that wants to hop on a plane's on a plane and promoting the hell out of New Zealand. Is that part of the deal? Is that trying to actually just get our tourism back and get us back feeling good about ourselves?
Absolutely. The simple fact is we will not get richer selling to ourselves. For New Zealand to be the wealthier country we all want it to be, so we can pay our people more, like those in Australia, so that we can have more investment in public services, we're going to need this economy to have an export-led recovery. It is going to be people selling their clever products, their services around the world that is going to make us wealthier. And that's, yes, it's our agricultural products, but it's also our ability to bring tourists here, to bring international students here. It's our ability to make sure that when a new software company starts in New Zealand, it can sell its services not just in the traditional trading markets, but across a range of places. So we're out there forging free trade agreements, encouraging people to come and invest in our businesses, making sure that we're a country that will do well in the world. And I think that's something we should feel optimistic about. In a world that's unstable, New Zealand has lots of trading relationships. We're seen as a good operator, and that's good for businesses wanting to export.
We have to stick to the facts too, though. And the latest Centrex report this morning shows there's been a 14% jump on people struggling with paying their bills compared to last year. You know, that doesn't tell me that we are on the improve. I know that we're all so optimistic. We're looking for that bright light. But when we find out that 14% more people are struggling to pay their bills, that's not a good feel.
Well, look, I saw those numbers, and it is a reality of the fact that as an economy recovers, the last thing that fixes itself is always unemployment. And we are, in this point, what economists predict is peak unemployment in terms of our economic recovery. So even prior to the election, Treasury was forecasting that at this point, unemployment would be just a bit higher than it actually is now, and then it comes down. And so when unemployment is higher, of course, that is when you see people unable to pay their bills, ending up in those credit numbers that you're quoting today. So that is a factor. The good news is, again, the Reserve Bank, the Treasury, all the economists are saying unemployment will come down from here. We will see that there are more jobs being created, 240,000 more jobs forecast to be created over the next 4 years, and that will have an impact. We're also seeing that more people now are fixing on to lower interest rates. that helps with all of the debt stress, whether it's the mortgage stress, whether it's the credit card stress, whether it's the overdraft stress. When they refix on a lower rate, that really is helpful. So I just don't deny those numbers. As you say, they're facts, and I meet enough New Zealanders each week to know there are still a lot of people doing it really tough, who've hung on, who've worked hard, they've done all the right things, Nick.
Do you get the feeling, because I mean, I want to throw another one little quick figure in there, but I mean, a 26% rise in company liquidations, I mean, that doesn't suggest to me that we're heading in the right direction. I mean, that's a quarter more liquidations, and we know that a lot of that's government have made those decisions. Does that tell you when you're walking the streets that it is feeling like it is on the recovery?
Look, I'm going to push back. It's not government that has made those decisions. Those are companies that have liquidated there'll be a huge variety of reasons. Some of them will have come through COVID but had big debt that they're carrying and have been unable to do it, to pay it off. Others of them will be in a situation where there just haven't been the customers through the door. That's a real sign of an economy struggling to get itself growing. And this has been our focus as a government. We've said, actually, you can spend all the money in the world, you can put band-aids on as many problems as you like, but if you don't get the underlying growth engine of the economy working again, then you won't see businesses surviving, let alone thriving. And when businesses survive and thrive, that's when jobs are created and incomes lift.
Could you have done more to help those? You know, you're the first to admit that we've been going through hard times. You're being really honest about it, which I appreciate. But do you think that your government could actually do more to assist those small-time businesses that have had, you've labelled it perfectly. There's thousands of companies out there that have struggled through COVID, struggled through the recession, now debt loaded to hell, owe money everywhere and are struggling like hell. Could you do more?
Well, I think we've worked really hard to be on the side of business. And there's certainly things we could have done that would have made it harder for them. So I look back on the approach that we've taken, which was first of all to say, actually putting a bit of cash into New Zealanders' pocket in the form of tax relief, it ain't going to solve all of the problems. But I tell you what, without that cash, things would have been worse. Making sure that we are getting rid of some of the red tape and compliance that's been in the way of business. That on the margin is going to be helpful, and we've got more to come on that. Things like the investment boost policy in the budget, which says, look, if you buy an asset for your business, we'll allow you to deduct 20% of the cost of that from your tax bill. That helps with cash flow. That helps encourage
Can you tell us how that's working? I mean, have you had any indication of how that's working?
Yeah, I've had tremendous feedback. So a lot of people have said that actually their business has benefited from it because literally in that week after the budget, they had customers come in and say, look, I'm going to buy some diggers, I'm going to buy some utes, I'm going to buy some new equipment because I now know that I'm going to get this tax relief if I do so. We've also had a number of businesses say to us, well, I'm bringing forward my expansion plans. So I think of the catering company who are going to build a bigger kitchen. They said, well, we're going to do it this year instead of 2027 because we can now make the cash flow work.
And they've still got the confidence to do that?
Yeah, well, that's exactly the point, Nick. What we were thinking about when we created the policy was one of the big effects of all of this global uncertainty is that it puts people off investing because they look out and they go, what are the next few years going to look like? Maybe I'll just retire to my little cave and put my head down and hope that things will get better. And what we need for the economy to recover is people investing. Yep. And so this policy is encouraging them, giving them a bit of a nudge. And I think you'd see a lot less investment if we hadn't introduced it.
Okay, let's move into Wellington because, I mean, you're a Wellingtonian. Proudly. Let's chat about it. How does Wellington feel to you right now? I mean, you've got children, you've got a husband, you've got a life in Wellington. How does it feel to you right now?
It feels to me like a place that needs a fresh start. I think we've been through a bit of a horrible time as a city, and there is still great fundamentals for Wellington. It's still a place where people are smart, they're tenacious, we've got the bush, we've got the sea, we've got incredible industries, whether it's the film industry, our hospitality industry, we've got Victoria University, we've got lots of cool things. But man, oh man, have we mucked up in a number of ways over the last few years. It's the classic, you can have all of God-given talent, but if you don't convert it through wise decisions,
how have we cocked it up?
frankly, I think the council's had its eye completely off the ball. The number of Wellingtonians have said to me, actually, we need some basics focused on. We need the pipes fixed. We need to have a council that's focused on keeping the rates low, because actually that has an impact not only on every Wellington household who have less money to spend in our economy, by the way, if they're paying very high rates, but it has a real impact on local businesses too, who pay proportionately some of the highest rates in the country for their commercial premises. And it seems to me that the council has not been focused on that mission, and at the same time has been quite distracted by what I would say are, interesting political debates, but frankly political debates that haven't brought the city forward, have often driven the city into division. And, it's a disappointing chapter.
Is there anything that you are looking at right now? We're only 4 months away from an election. Is there anything that you look at it and say, that would be really good for Wellington if that person gets in? And I don't want you to suggest anybody, but is there anything that excites you in the pipeline coming forward?
Well, there's two things that I'll be looking for in candidates, and as you say, I never endorse anyone, and I can see good personal qualities in just about everyone who runs for office, and good on them for doing so. But the first is, as I say, there is a real challenge for Wellington that ratepayers can't take much more. That's my observation. I meet a lot of people on fixed and lower incomes who are just saying, I honestly can't pay these ever-increasing rates. So I'm looking for leadership that takes that issue really seriously, and that means actually being prepared to stop doing some things. We've had to do that as a government, but if you don't do that, actually you're punishing Wellingtonians. The second thing I'm looking for is policies that are genuinely pro-business and that understand if Wellington's going to do well in future, this has to be a good place to set up enterprise, to hire people, to expand and grow. And so things like, are you going to dig up all of Lambton Quay and Courtney Place right when people are trying to get through an economic recovery? That stuff matters.
Right.
And so that's what I'm looking for across the policy platforms. Are you genuinely going to keep rates
Are you for or against
under
the Golden
control?
Mile?
I don't think that it's the right time to be doing it. I understand the vision, but I tell you what, I also talk to those business people whose premises will be affected. This is the last thing they need right now. And frankly, as I say, a lot of those dollars might be better on the pipes or reducing the rate bill.
Yeah. Take a short break. We're with Finance Minister Nicola Willis, Wellington Mornings. It is 19 minutes past 10. We'll be back. I want to ask her about her rates bill. Has she looked at it lately? Willis, Finance Minister, join us in the studio for half an hour this morning. It's your report card, half yearly report card. What do we do? Have a Christmas show and then a half yearly one. Here we go. Rates bill. I want to talk about rates. Another 12% rates locked in for Wellington. Is this acceptable to you?
Well, I don't think Wellingtonians can keep up with it continuing to rise at that rate. It's too much for people. They're already challenged with rates at this level, and if they keep rising like this, I really do worry, which is why the council needs to focus on the basics. And of course, there's a double whammy for many Wellington homeowners, because the same time as they're facing a bigger rates bill, many people have found that the value of their property has also declined. So I know that weighs heavily on the minds of Wellingtonians, and as I said earlier, that's why I'm looking for councillors who are pledging to be disciplined about the way they spend ratepayer money.
Is it about time that the government stepped in and put some sort of, cap on rates? Is it getting to that stage where, your parents, my parents, if they were still alive, they wouldn't be able to live in their family home?
Yeah, and that is absolutely the government's view, is that we do have a role to play. And so we will shortly be introducing legislation to put some brakes on how much local councils take on in their kind of worldview of what their job is. So the first thing is to get them focused on their core business, as Chris Luxon said last year at the local government conference, which they all didn't like very much. Do the basics well. Focus on the basics. Don't do all of this other stuff. Focus on the basics. And so we are going to actually make sure that the law constrains them in that regard too.
How far away is that? How far away do we have to keep wondering until the government says, okay, enough's enough?
We'll be introducing that very soon. But then the second piece is around rates, and we are exploring what are the options here for making sure that councils, when they're doing rate increases, are making sure that it's actually for the core infrastructure and the development that we want to see, but that they're also making use of the other funding and financing tools that are available to them. So we've done quite a lot of work as a government on new ways of making sure that you can use development levies, you can use infrastructure funding and financing, you can do different things as a council to fund your big projects. And we want to see those tools being used, not just going to the easy option, which is hiking the rates.
Right. And commercial rates in Wellington, obviously you're dealing with business people. They'll be telling you that, it's 20% dearer for the same value in Christchurch or the same value in Auckland. We're paying 20% more commercial rates in Wellington. Why? And why do we let that happen?
Yeah, and it matters, right? Because on the margin, when businesses are looking at where shall I operate and does it stack up, that's just another cost line which might put them off. And I've actually spoken with quite a few people who have said, well, that's why I moved out to Purirua, or that's why I moved out to the Hut, because of the rates. And so if Wellington wants to have a vibrant business district, we do need to worry about that. Now, I accept Wellington's got lots of things to fund, but I think that's why it irks people when we see the council distracted by all sorts of things that they're spending your money on, because we know that they should be focused on keeping the rates under control and doing the basics well.
Supermarkets. Last week you wrote to the supermarkets about misleading pricing, and it came after two supermarkets. What did you actually say to these supermarkets? And are supermarkets a sort of an easy target at the moment?
Well, I'm really glad I did that, because I'll tell you what provoked me, which is that there were a couple of big pack and saves in Auckland who pled guilty to multiple charges of misleading pricing and misleading promotions. And the Commerce Commission haven't done many prosecutions in their time. It's pretty hard to do those prosecutions for misleading pricing and misleading promotions, but they've decided that the problem has been widespread enough, with 60% of New Zealand shoppers complaining that they've had a misleading price situation at the supermarket, that they actually need to do some prosecutions to make sure that the supermarkets take these issues seriously and change their ways. And the reason I'm glad that I brought attention to this is I think if I hadn't done that, that misbehaviour would have just flown under the radar. And actually we have a law in this country, the Fair Trading Act. Every retailer needs to comply with it. Supermarkets are some of the most sophisticated businesses in the country. They need good electronic systems, good staff training, really clearly advertised refund policies. And it should be the case that actually they have done that already. But I've written to them and said, well, spell out to me how you're doing it. I can report to you. I have had one of the supermarket chains write back already. And I expect that replies will be forthcoming. because sunlight is a good disinfectant, Nick. When we draw attention to these issues, we actually see change.
Okay. I want to ask you about the ferries too, because we've had our own private discussion about what's gone on with the ferries. Winston Peters sort of opened the door a little bit and said that we'd look at private enterprise and we'd look at public-private stuff, and then he's closed the door as quickly as he opened it. What's your view on it? Do you reckon that we could actually do a better system than we've got right now with Kiwi Rail?
Well, I think we've set this up in a really smart way, which is rather than just saying Kiwi Rail, who, let's be honest, have pretty patchy history when it comes to ferry procurement. They were the ones right behind IREX. Rather than saying, Kiwi Rail, you're in charge of this, we've set up a special structure, Ferry Holdings, which has some really great people on its board. And we've said this is the entity responsible and focused on two things. One, getting the port infrastructure delivered in a timely and affordable manner that we need to receive these new ferries. And two, procuring the ferries internationally at the right price and getting them here on time. So no other distractions like Kiwi Rail has, just focus on that. The other flexibility with that structure is that in the future, that gives you some options. So we presume that Kiwi Rail will operate the ferries. That's the working assumption. But it does provide flexibility.
Is your mind open to doing something differently with that?
Well, look, I'm just conscious that this isn't an issue until 2029. That's when the ferries arrive. So I think it's always good to give yourself flexibility when things are several years away and to do what's best for the people who use the ferries and the New Zealand taxpayer.
Would you look at it like an Air New Zealand style? I mean, I've said, we've been doing it this morning on the show, and I said, why can't we look at an Air New Zealand style? I mean, it's working successfully. Why couldn't you do something like that?
Well, look, those are all options that could be considered in future because we've set up the structure from the beginning that gives you that flexibility. Anything, of course, would have to be proven against, as I said, those two criteria. Would that deliver really well for everyone who relies on the ferries to get their freight or family across the Cook Strait? And would that deliver good value for the New Zealand taxpayer? Okay.
Now, I really want to ask you this really quickly. Working from home. I mean, we've talked about the economy in Wellington and we've talked about it. We as a city are affected more by this than anyone else. Is there going to be any changes? There's slight rumours that you're going to come down and say government departments are going to have to all work back at their office. I know that you've started talking about it. Is there more in the pipeline with this?
Well, look, when we came to government, we realised that post-COVID there'd been a real change in how much working from home was happening, and some of that's been good because there are good reasons for people to have flexibility. But we were quite surprised that there weren't really very clear policies about what the expectations were in some public agencies in terms of when people would work from home and when they wouldn't. And I'm old-fashioned, apparently, but I think actually there's quite a lot of value in seeing your workmates, particularly when you manage them or are being managed by them. And there's quite a lot of value in the social interactions that happen between different workers in the workplace, and we want to encourage that. So we've reissued the working from home guidelines, and we've asked every government agency to have very clear policies in place.
Is there more
with their
coming?
Staff.
Are you getting to the stage where you're going to be a little bit firmer?
Well, what we've had is individual agencies reviewing their policies one at a time and updating them, so you'll continue to see that. I, of course, have heard from those businesses in Wellington who say, you know, we'd like people coming into the city a bit more. Equally, I've had local cafes in the suburbs say we quite like it, the people are working from home. So I accept that there are two sides to the issue. But look, I think we all like it when Lambton Quay's busy, when Courtenay Place is busy, when the cafes have people lining up to buy food. We all like that, and I like it when it's buzzy in Wellington too.
Great to have you, and thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate, and I know that our Wellington listeners appreciate having you on the show whenever you can make yourself available. It's really good. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work. Keep
Lovely
fighting
to be
the fight.
on the show. Let's try and make it less than 6 months between dates next time.
Okay. Great to see you. Thank you very much. Finance Minister Nicola Willis there.